Hello, my name is David New, and I'm the founder and CEO of Tiny Pulse. Today, I'm delighted to have Kendall Robeson join me from eMindful. So to kick it off, Kendall, can you introduce what does eMindful do, and then what specifically is your role there?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. eMindful has a vision of making every moment matter. And we're on a mission to deliver evidence based mindfulness programs applied to everyday life and chronic conditions, promoting health, happiness, and performance.
Mm,
And if you don't know what mindfulness is, it's totally fine. When I first started working here, I really didn't either. But all mindfulness is practicing the ability to pay attention to what's happening in the present moment and being open about it, curious, and willing to just be with whatever is.
mm.
So, what eMindful does is we have expert teachers that really create a connection with our participants that allow them to really understand themselves
Hmm.
and thus increase their productivity and make their lives and every one of their moments matter.
Oh, great. And then what is your role at eMindful?
Sure. So I'm the digital content and media manager, and I'm housed underneath our curriculum department.
Hmm.
And what I do is basically bring my media background experience into our programs and on our digital platform to create compelling stories and help resonate with our participants
Hmm.
and have their mindfulness experience be even more impactful.
Got it. And like most companies here or around the world, you folks have been impacted by COVID-19. So I'm curious from like a cultural perspective, what were some of the biggest impacts to eMindful? And then maybe what's one that you didn't even expect that was a bit of a surprise?
Sure. So eMindful is composed of about 30 employees, and the majority of us are located at our headquarters in Orlando, Florida.
Hmm.
However, we have a big contingent that are virtual employees. So, what we did as an organization before COVID even started was we have a culture club, which is
Mm,
designed to kind of bridge that gap between virtual and local employees and really help our company rally around our core values and make sure that we're creating an environment where everyone can flourish and bring their best selves to work.
mhm.
So, being on that culture club and being a local employee, we worked really hard to try and bridge that gap and make sure that what we were experiencing and that cohesiveness in the office was felt outside the office as well. So when COVID happened, it was really interesting because we had to really lean into and have our virtual employees help
Mm,
us
yeah.
locally who had never really had to work from home. We have a benefit of working from home on Fridays, but it's very different now with COVID and the new normal of having to work from home with so many different obstacles and elements that are playing into your day to day.
Yeah.
So we really kind of had to bridge that gap and get cues as to how to keep our momentum up in
Mhm.
the face of a global pandemic.
Yeah. And then in terms of, one of the reasons why we're talking is I was had the pleasure of talking to your CEO, Mary Picotti, and she was sharing all the wonderful things that you folks have been doing in the Culture Club to keep that cohesiveness in your culture. But before we jump into the specifics of that, I'm just curious, like, what's one thing that Mary has done that's really impressed you about her leadership during this crisis?
So Mary is such a mindful leader. And I think one of the biggest things she's done for us as a company and helped with our culture is she's holding basically bi-weekly Q&A sessions with the
Mm,
CEO. And they are, completely transparent. She sits down. We've actually had a lot of questions in Tiny Pulse regarding COVID and, how we feel personally, how
yeah.
we think it's going to impact professionally, everything else. And she takes the time to sit down with us and have a very transparent discussion.
Mm,
And it's really alleviated a lot of stress that any of us had and makes us feel even more committed to doing what we're doing because we know that our mission is going to help people get through this experience as well.
great. So let's get to the fun stuff. So Mary,
Yeah.
she like tickled my imagination and inspired me when she said that, our culture club, they did a virtual Easter egg hunt, and they did a
Mhm.
photo contest, and I'm like, whoa, that's great. I want to learn how to do that. But then I thought, well, let's just get the Culture Club on a video call, and then let's just share it with all the other people who are on that journey together. So can you please share about those couple of initiatives?
Sure. So it was really fun. People were kind of, we were coming up on Passover and Easter weekend,
Hmm.
and we really kind of, some people were kind of feeling sad that their
Yeah.
typical traditions or springtime celebrations they weren't going to be able to do. So as a culture club, we huddled together and we're like, okay, what do we miss the most? Well, we do definitely miss egg hunting. So how
Mhm.
can we bring that to our company? And we created a little subcommittee, and what we did was a virtual egg hunt where embedded in different platforms that we have to get our work done, Jira, Slack, emails,
Hmm.
calendar invites, we actually hid little Easter eggs, little clip art, simple Easter eggs. And the morning of the big egg hunt, we sent out an email invite that actually had, I changed my email signature to have a little egg in it. And we gave people instructions and some hints as to where they could find it, maybe on a link to Confluence or
Hmm.
on our employee happiness page. And we actually had people throughout the day, once they found one, they had to Slack it to myself or another woman that I work with.
Hmm.
And people were so competitive and
Yeah.
had so much fun. It was great. Like at 4 o'clock at the end of the day, when the last egg went out, we had people that had timestamps when they found eggs and were emailing them to us. So it was really fun. I was so surprised. I kind of thought it was going to be, this is really either going to land or it's going to be dicey, but it
Yeah.
went really well.
And how many Easter eggs did you end up stashing away?
So we had 12. And
Wow.
then, yep. And then the next morning we did them. We had, some of them were actually, like we had hints to, and then other ones we sent out sneakily throughout the
Hmm.
day. But when it was all done, I put my mad Photoshop skills to work and put them all in an Easter basket. And then we announced the
Oh,
winner the next morning.
wow. Wow. And did you have any prizes for the winners, or was it just competitive being able to brag?
It's a competitive title. I mean, you're now an award-winning egg champion of
Of course.
eMindful.
Yes, of course. The first ever, so you have to defend your title next year, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. And then the other one that I thought was super creative was this photo contest. And I believe, if I remember this correctly, it's like the most oddest or the most peculiar things that you've bought on Amazon. I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds great. So correct me or fine tune what you folks actually did and how you pulled that off.
Sure. So we came up with different categories. What's a new hobby that someone's adopted during quarantine, or what's
Mm.
the most interesting thing you bought on Amazon, or who are our Gordon Ramsay chefs that have done amazing baking and cooking in the kitchen. We also got creative with coming up with the title of who was the biggest work from home MacGyver, because
Yeah.
not everyone has a home office
Yeah.
that is typical to their typical office environment. So we had some people get really creative with, I think it's like a drying rack that they put over a treadmill to create a treadmill desk.
Wow.
I know,
Interesting.
pretty inventive. Um, but it was really fun, and we sent it out and allowed all employees, encouraged them to participate, and we got some really hilarious images back. And we're going to do another round because after people saw the results and saw what people were submitting,
Uh-huh.
people realized that they had bought way weirder things on Amazon than a cold brew maker.
So
So
some of the categories were what you've bought, MacGyver, and Gordon Ramsay, and then people just submitted photos. And did who got to vote on who the winner was, or is it there's no winner, it's just sharing it amongst the culture?
so we are a little competitive, right?
Yeah.
So we included in an all company meeting, we took some time. We had a subcommittee of the culture club that actually voted representatives from each department that
Mhm.
voted on the actual blue ribbon winners, but everyone was a winner. And
Everyone wins.
everyone won. And we put it into a PowerPoint deck, and Mary was so gracious and gave us some fun time at the end of our, quarterly update, all company meeting, to
Hmm.
go through and review all the pictures.
Yeah. So if other people are also inspired to do something similar, in terms of tips, is like how big is the culture club that, spearheaded this? And then any other kind of hints that they should be aware of when they're launching either the Easter egg hunt or photo contest or something similar?
So our culture club is about 10 people and we have different subcommittees within it that's all broken down. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to really take into account how many different scenarios your employees and colleagues are working in and
Hmm.
how you might have certain needs, but they could be very, very different from another one of your colleagues.
Mm,
And that's something that any initiative we've taken to push forward, we've typically always had the subcommittee composed of a virtual and a local and
mm,
the office employee,
smart.
just to make sure we're trying to meet as many different needs as we can.
Hmm. Hmm. Got it. All right. Well, before I wrap it up, last question here, Kendall, is if you had to go back in a time machine and give yourself some advice before this work from home situation, based on everything you've learned, what would you whisper into your ear?
Ooh, I think I would whisper, have a better desk at my house. And also, just be very gentle with yourself when it comes to homeschooling your children. I would just say, reading a book is probably enough some days.
Yeah, with a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, I totally understand.
Yes.
So, well, I want to wrap up and say thank you so much for sharing your experiences with other like-minded leaders who are on this journey together to make their employees happier.
Thanks so much. It was great talking with you.